What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So less than a month from now, the Four Nation Faceoffs rosters begin to get rolled out. It's not something that gets announced a month out. We're going to know all the teams by December 2nd. They start rolling them out November 29th. So I thought I would do a little updated roster prediction, considering the fact that I did one prior like a month and a half ago before the season. And I'm not saying this list is going to be like solely based off the first 10 games of the NHL season. Obviously, last year and prior years mean more than just a 10-game sample size. But I definitely think that there are some guys that have definitely risen, turned into locks to make this team, and maybe some other guys whose status is a little bit up in the air, whether or not they're going to make this team. And definitely some of my line and pair combinations have definitely changed in regards to these teams. And when looking at these picks, I'm not just picking the 12 best forwards, the 6 best defensemen, I guess 13 best because you have your extras, and 7 best. I'm going to be thinking more so fit when looking at these teams, especially when looking at like a fourth line, looking for more so two-way players, the defense pair, one more offensive guy, one more defensive guy, not in every scenario, but I want a well-balanced team. I'm not just picking solely the best players, because in order to build the best team, you need to have some chemistry, and definitely guys know their role. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're not going to waste any time. And up first, we got Team Sweden. One major change that I changed was Joel Eriksson. Now I have the first line center. Considering the fact that Pettersson and Zibanejad are very much slacking to start, don't get me wrong, if both of those guys really start to find their groove, but I think Joel Eriksson is criminally underrated, and especially on that top line when looking at William Nylander and Philip Forsberg, not the best defensive players in the NHL. So I like the idea of having a Selke level guy that still can give you 30 goals and 40 assists throughout a season on that top pair. I'm very biased towards Joel Eriksson. I get a lot of people call him my doppelganger. Next up, you got the Pettersson, Bratt, Kempe line, very explosive offensively. That third line, you have the two future cornerstones of Swedish forwards with Leo Carlsson and Lucas Raymond, as well as a guy like Mika Zibanejad. Maybe they can awake Mika Zibanejad at 5-on-5. William Eklund on my team now. I forget if he was an extra or just completely off the team last time I did this, but he's playing fantastic for the San Jose Sharks. 8 points in 11 games thus far, while also being pretty solid defensively. And again, when talking about more of those defensive players on the fourth line, Mikael Backlund, not the sexiest player, only around the 35 to 40 point guy at this point, but still gives you very good defensive play. He's been in Selke talks the last couple years, as well as William Karlsson, also great defensively, and he's honestly slept on offensively. He had 30 goals, 30 assists for 60 points last year in 70 games. In terms of the defense, I'd lock in Dahlin, Rasmus Andersson as your top pair at this point. Dahlin's just their best defenseman, point blank, period, as well as Rasmus Andersson having a great start. I still had him on this team when I did this last time, but he's a lock right now. He's by far Sweden's best right-handed defenseman at this point. Victor Hedman, more so of an offensive guy, paired with more so of a defensive guy in Jonas Brodin. Brodin is a lefty, but there's just not a lot of right-handers to choose from for Sweden, so I think he's going to have to play on the right side if he's going to be on this team. But he's awesome defensively. He's the top 5 defensive defenseman in the NHL. Matthias Ekholm, also fantastic defensively with Gustav Forsling. That third pair would just be so great defensively in terms of locking up guys late in games. In terms of the goalies, Linus Ullmark, I'm still going with Linus Ullmark over Gustafsson. Gustafsson is definitely the best goalie right now, but I trust the track record of Linus Ullmark a little bit more, considering the fact he's been doing it for like the last 5 years. But if Gustafsson keeps on playing like this, which is genuinely Vezina level, he'll probably be the starter. In terms of extras, I don't have Elias Lindholm on this team. He pretty bad last year, and this year had a little bit of a hot start, but has not looked that good overall for the Bruins. I'm going with a guy like Alex Wenberg. Again, plugging him into more of a bottom 6 role, I think would be more efficient. Again, similarly to a Mikael Backlund, not the sexiest player, but he's actually having a pretty good start offensively and is just so responsible defensively. One of the best on an actual contender. He's like a fantastic third line center, two-way guy, and filled that role for the New York Rangers. I think he's a little bit underrated. Hampus Lindholm, another very good two-way guy that you can basically plug in anywhere. And Jacob Markstrom, not having the strongest start, but I'm still definitely picking him over like a Sam Ersson at this point. For Team Sweden, this is my Team Sweden. Very good team. I think that they are clear-cut the third best team in this tournament, and the gap between them and who I'd have at second is smaller than the gap between them and Finland. Okay, so notes from the editing bay before we move over to Team USA. Carlson actually was one of the 5 players on Sweden that got automatic status, so he would just be the 7th defenseman. He wouldn't actually be on the actual roster, but Hampus Lindholm, you got to kick rocks. Next up, Team USA, when looking at this, I moved Jack Hughes up to the wing. I think that their center depth is just so disgusting for the Team USA that a smaller guy like Jack Hughes might be served better on the wing. Still a top 15 player in the NHL despite his slow start, but I like Hughes, Matthews, Tkachuk. You got your goal scorer in Matthews. You got your transitional player in Hughes. You got your guy that just does everything in Matthew Tkachuk. And Matthew Tkachuk, although he is a left winger, played right wing for so long in Calgary that I'm not too concerned about. That second line, Jack Eichel's playing amazing right now. Jake Gensel, you give him talent and he's a freak. And then Tage Thompson's having a big bounce back year for the Buffalo Sabres. They're not winning a ton of games, but he's yet again producing like a true first line center, and he can definitely play on the wing. Is kind of that. This would just be an insane goal scoring line. The third line, I have Kyle Connor on the team now. I think I had him as an extra last time. I still have some reservations about him being in a bottom six role, given his defensive capabilities or lack thereof. But I think that the offensive talent is just so impressive considering the streak that he's on right now, and I expect him to kind of keep this going. JT Miller is your third line two-way center. Clayton Keller is your third line guy. This would still be more of a scoring line, not too much defense, and then that fourth line is more so of a defensive line. Matthew Boldy, I think, has really solidified himself and is definitely a guy that a lot of people maybe didn't have on their team before the start of the season. At this point, given his two-way play, well above point per game right now, I think that he's looking like a lock to make this team. Dylan Larkin, a guy that his status might be a little bit up in the air. I believe he has 5 goals, 1 assist in like 11 games at this point, not really cementing himself, but I still think he's just such a good two-way guy that I would have him. And then you got to have Brady Tkachuk on this team, yet again having a very good offensive showing, and I think in a fourth line, smash mouth kind of role, he'd really thrive. Jason Robertson as an extra. I know that might be controversial, but it's just been it's really weird. He had 109 points in 2023. Last year, 82. You think it's a fluke. He's starting off very slow yet again with only 7 points in 10 games. Very good defensively, but right now the offensive offensive output isn't really doing it for me. Well, I just jumped to the extras. Defense, Slavin Fox, Hughes, McAvoy, you can swap those pairs first, second pair. I'm not saying that Quinn Hughes is the third best defenseman on this team. I'm saying Slavin is more of a defensive guy, works with Adam Fox, who's also great defensively, but more so offensively. And then Quinn Hughes, more so offensively, works with Charlie McAvoy. It doesn't make sense to pair Adam Fox and Quinn Hughes, more so smaller guys that are still fantastic both ways. They'd be a great pair, but I think that they're better suited. Maybe you put them together at the end of games, but not, especially end of games when you're down, but not to start out. Jake Sanderson, again, I think that Zach Werenski is still better than Jake Sanderson right now, but I think because Sanderson is definitely more of a defensive guy, I'd pair him with John Carlson. I believe I had John Carlson on this team last time, and people call me crazy. He's playing amazing. You see, once he actually has a very good partner, a damn good partner in Jacob Chikrin, he is yet again turning the clocks back to like 3 to 4 years ago. I think his experience, maybe not the best defensive guy, but especially if you pair him with the Jake Sanderson, I think you're going to get the best version of John Carlson. Goalies, Connor Hellebuck, he's got to be the favorite to be the starter right now. I know the playoff numbers aren't that impressive, but still he's the best regular season goalie, and I think he can step up in a big way come Four Nations. Jake Ottinger is your number 2. Disclaimer, this is Demko. I'm just too much uncertainty. If he comes back, if he plays good, definitely Demko is going to be on this team, but right now we still don't know when he's going to return and what he's going to look like when he returns. Jake Ottinger as that number 2. I think he definitely passed Jeremy Swayman, given how fantastic he's been to start this season. And then the extras, again, as I mentioned, I like Zach Werenski more. If Team USA had a better right-handed defensive defenseman, I'd probably go Werenski there. You could argue that bottom pair should be Werenski and Faber, but I do lean more so at John Carlson and Jake Sanderson. And then Jeremy Swayman, not playing the best right now, but Boston is kind of a mess in their own right in a bunch of different regards, so I'm not going to kill him for that. I think he's still the third best American goalie. Finland, not too much changes, just because if you're like an NHL player, you kind of make Team Finland. Capo Kakko is fully on the roster now. I think I had him as an extra before. He has definitely earned that right. Kakaniemi, I think, was completely off. I bumped Eetu Luostarinen off. He's playing very good right now, but I did go with the Kakaniemi ahead of him. In terms of the lines, I kind of shuffled them a little bit. I moved Hintz from third line center to second line left wing. I think you just got to play him with so much talent. Aho and Teravainen make way too much sense. Lehkonen is definitely not better than Hintz, but I think Lehkonen and Rantanen have that chemistry. Third line center, the reason why I moved up Rupe Hintz is now I have very much confidence that Mikael Granlund wasn't just last year, was a last career year fluke. He is playing goddamn good right now. Patrick Laine, as long as he's healthy, will be on this team. That fourth line is actually pretty impressive, especially based on the start that Anton Lundell had. You can arguably move Anton Lundell to third line center, and I won't hate it. Tolvanen's been solid, and Kakko as well. The defense is very shaky. I'm not going to lie. Outside of Miro Heiskanen and Lundell, there's not much. Again, Valimaki has like 0 points in 9 games, not playing that good for Utah. And just because of their lack of NHL defensemen, he's still probably going to make this team. Yuki Haru, I'm not a big fan of. Mikkola, Stanley Cup winner, who's actually very solid last year, and Rasmus Ristolainen on that second pair. Goalies are pretty straightforward. Saros, you can go with Lankinen as the backup right now if he definitely keeps up with the way that he's going. He'll be the backup. UPL definitely has a longer track record, so I went with UPL, but definitely Kevin Lankinen is making this team at this point. Then lastly, we have Canada. We got some serious shakeups to this roster. I threw Zach Hyman off this team. When looking at it, he is having a brutal start. Makes you question about that 50-goal season. I previously had him with Connor McDavid and Mitch Marner, given the fact that the chemistry was like solely chemistry. I'm not saying Zach Hyman's a top 3 forward on this team, but I took him off. I took him off entirely. I moved Crosby up. Brad Marchand is one of the guaranteed players to be on this in the first 5 that were announced. He was announced, so like I don't even know if he'd be on the team point blank period if not for that, but he is on the team, and I put him with Nathan MacKinnon and Connor Bedard. I still think Marchand's a very good 2-way player, so to throw him with more so 2 offensive dynamos in Nathan MacKinnon and Connor Bedard make a lot of sense. That third line, the Florida line, Hagel and Point have some chemistry. Hagel's yet again proving that last year wasn't a fluke. He is a damn good first liner, as well as Sam Reinhart, great both ways. Braden Point, very good defensively. I have Dylan Strome on this team. I think that he's earning himself a spot on the team. You might say that is absolutely insane. He put up 65 and 67 points on the Washington Capitals. The Washington Capitals team that was pretty devoid of offense the last couple of years. This year, killing it right now, 13 points in 9 games, while also having very, 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 very good defensive numbers. Maybe not the ideal physical fourth liner, but I think that he has earned his spot on this team. Nick Suzuki is the fourth line center. Mark Stone is the third line or fourth line right wing. Mark Stone is killing it right now. I told you, because that he's a beast. I kept him in my top 30 players in the NHL, and I got a lot of shit. In terms of the left defense, Taze McCarr, don't touch it. Best pair in the NHL. Josh Morrissey, Evan Bouchard. I'm keeping this the way it was. Josh Morrissey playing amazing. Evan Bouchard, I'm not too concerned about the lack of production right now. The underlying numbers are still very solid. Yes, maybe he's makes some boneheaded decisions and has been on the ice for a decent amount of goals. He is still a top 15 defensemen in the NHL. Theodore and Pietrangelo. I threw Noah Dobson out of this team, considering he's also had a slow start. I also tossed Matt Barzal in terms of the forward core. My Islanders are not playing that good. I got Alex Pietrangelo in here with Shea Theodore. I'm not as high on Alex Pietrangelo as others, but I think considering the fact that him and Theodore have played together, they don't play most of the time in Vegas, but they have some experience playing together. I think you put them together as your bottom pair. Maybe not the best defensive unit, but I think that the chemistry is there. In terms of goalies, this is where it probably gets controversial. I'd have Cam Talbot right now. I think that he's the only guy that was good last year objectively with a 913, is good right now for the Detroit Red Wings that are not that good of a team. I think right now he probably has the inside track in terms of being the most consistent guy. Yes, maybe he wasn't that good in 2023. Jordan Binnington is the backup. It's all, especially this team, it's all up in the air in terms of goaltending. I wouldn't be surprised if the actual starter might not even be on the goddamn roster right now that I have. It might be someone else. And then in terms of extras, Ryan O'Reilly, just the veteran 2-way guy. You could arguably put him in that fourth line role instead of Dylan Strome, and I wouldn't hate it. Mackenzie Weegar, if there wasn't a Vegas connection, I probably would have him on that third pair, and Aiden Ill as your backup. But yeah, here are the full teams: Sweden, USA, Finland, Canada. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about these teams? Who are you picking to win Four Nations? Who should have I had on the roster, off the roster? I'll be seeing the next one.